Hello and welcome, dear learners. In today's session, we are going to dive into the poem Enterprise by Nissim Ezekiel. It is a really powerful story, an allegory about human struggle, spiritual disillusionment, and just the complex journey of life itself. My hope is that by the end of this lesson, you won't just get this poem on a literary level, you will also connect with it philosophically and spiritually, something that actually Nissim Ezekiel subtly invites us to do. Let's begin by outlining what we aim to achieve today. What are the goals for this session? We'll first identify and analyze the poetic devices like metaphor, allegory, irony, tone and symbolism. We are also going to understand the philosophical dimensions. We look at concepts like existentialism, absurdism and nihilism. And finally, we will reflect on spiritual themes such as illusion versus reality, detachment and self-awareness. You know, this poem is truly so much more than a story. It's a mirror held up to life's most significant questions. Before we dive into the poem, let's take a moment to learn a little more about the poet. Nissim Ezekiel was born in the year 1924 and he is widely recognized as the father of modern Indian English poetry. He was a Jewish poet from Mumbai. And what is interesting in his writing is he really blends Indian culture with his Western thoughts. His works are rich with irony, introspection and humanism. He was also a teacher, a playwright and even an art critic. His poetic works like A Time to Change, The Unfinished Man and Hymns in Darkness, they really speak to inner conflict a person has, the identity and the absurdity of modern life. Okay, now coming to the poem itself, Enterprise tells the story of a group of people who start this really enthusiastic journey. You could call it a pilgrimage. They are all united by a common purpose. But here's the thing, as the journey unfolds, differences start to grow and hardships really began to break their spirits, and that initial unity they had just crumbles down, and by the end they do reach the destination, but honestly speaking they are confused, broken and they completely change. Does that sound familiar to you? Because the truth is the journey is not a physical journey. It's actually a metaphor for life. The ambition, the faith and that deep quest the soul has for meaning. Now let's go through this poem stanza by stanza and we'll really break down what's happening and what it means. Okay? Let's start with the first stanza. It talks about the hopeful beginning. It started as a pilgrimage, exalting minds and making all the burdens light. The second stage explored, but did not test the call. The sun beat down to match our rage. So this journey, it kicks off as a really good start, a spiritual quest, a pilgrimage. And the mood, it's super optimistic. It's full of zeal. When the poet says exalting minds, it's telling us the group felt truly uplifted mentally and their troubles did not seem much. They were all light. But then as we get into the end of this very first stanza, you actually start to see the challenges that pop up. And the line that says, the sun beat down to match our rage. It's a clever hint, isn't it? It suggests that those problems are starting to mirror or even match the tensions that are already building up inside the group. Now let's turn our attention to the second stanza, which highlights the observations and endurance that the group has. It goes like, "We stood it very well, I thought, observed and put down copious notes on things the peasants sold and bought, the way of serpents and goats, 3 cities where a sage had taught." Even with the discomfort of this group, they really push through with curiosity and endurance. They don't give up now, and that's something very interesting we all should note. They observe the local life, they write down what they see, and this tells us they had a sense of purpose. When it mentions about the serpents and goats, that's symbolizing the exotic or even the unfamiliar places the group has never seen. And those 3 cities, what do you think they point at? They kind of point to something that is historical or spiritually important, don't they? So the tone stays pretty steady here, and they still sustained the motivation. They are not giving up. But now we are heading to the third stanza that talks about the conflict and loss that they are going to face. Let's read it. "But when the differences arose on how to cross a desert patch, we lost a friend whose stylish prose was quite the best of all our batch. A shadow falls on us and grows." This, my dear students, is the turning point of the poem. What actually happens here? Disagreements just start popping up, and a key member, someone very important, ends up leaving the group. That's a huge symbolic loss, isn't it? Imagine a dear friend of yours leaving the group because of a conflict or misunderstanding in the middle of something that you all started together. It doesn't feel good, right? It symbolizes the loss of their unity and even their smart thinking as a group. And that line, "a shadow falls on us and grows," it really marks the beginning of their disillusionment and emotional darkness. You can just feel it building over and over. The whole tone completely shifts from being harmonious to outright conflict now. Now, the poet doesn't stop here. He now takes it to a stage where they are leading to a directionless faith and attacks. It goes like this. "Another phase was reached when we were twice attacked and lost our way. A section claimed its liberty to leave the group. I tried to pray. Our leader said he smelt the sea." This stanza, it really reflects a deepening crisis. The group actually gets physically attacked and they lose their way, and they just start to fall apart. And what about the prayer the author is talking about? Interestingly, he says even the prayer doesn't bring any solace. Their leader even claims that he can smell the sea. What does the phrase "smell the sea" mean? The leaders turn out to start giving false hope to the group. No one else in the group actually shares that vision. Only the leaders are giving false hope. So the group just gets more and more confused. They break into pieces and they feel totally disconnected, spiritually and within the group. Now, the fifth stanza. "We noticed nothing as we went, a straggling crowd of little hope, ignoring what the thunder meant, deprived of common needs like soap. Some were broken, some merely bent." Here, the group truly reaches its lowest point. They are physically a mess now and just spiritually numb. Even something like thunder, which usually signals a big divine warning or a wake-up call, goes completely unnoticed. Their basic needs are not even met. The pilgrims who once started the journey so hopefully have now become a hopeless crowd, totally broken and exhausted. Ezekiel here really uses symbolism and irony to make us feel how completely they have collapsed. It's quite striking, isn't it? Now, the sixth stanza that talks about the realization of the group. It beautifully states, let's read it together. When finally we reached the place, we hardly know why we were there. The trip had darkened every face. Our deeds were neither great nor rare. Home is where we have to gather grace. Isn't it beautiful? In the final stanza, we get the poem's big philosophical conclusion. They finally reach their destination, but here's the twist. It means absolutely nothing to them now. All their efforts weren't anything special, and spirits were really very low now. The poem ends with a really deep understanding. True grace isn't found by searching far away on some big adventure, but actually right at home. It's a very powerful message to everyone out there to find peace within, to stay humble and realizing that searching for fulfillment in external journeys might just be an illusion. Think about it, isn't it? Finding peace within is the ultimate happiness. We just explored the poem stanza by stanza, but can we just take a moment to consider the title? Why enterprise? Think about it. What is an enterprise? It's generally a tough or challenging project, isn't it? Here, Ezekiel uses it metaphorically for a big, idealistic and human goal, maybe a dream, a spiritual quest, or just a major life ambition. The poem really shows us how these enterprises often don't work out because of human flaws like ego, pride, and feeling disconnected. It's a powerful statement, don't you think so? Now let's talk about the speaker's voice and tone in the poem. How does the speaker in this poem come across? What kind of emotions and perspectives do they show? Reflective, observant, sometimes ironic and melancholic. He even sounds detached, almost as if he is observing the journey from a distance rather than being fully inside it. You will notice he uses irony, for instance, in the line, "Our deeds were neither great nor rare." And his tone really shifts the poem from idealistic in the beginning of the poem to bitter and then finally to a quiet acceptance. In the end, he finds grace not at the destination but at home. It's very interesting, right? Now let's move on to the philosophical lens through which this poem can be read. Think of these as different frameworks, perhaps ways of looking at life that really helps us understand the poem in a deeper message. Existentialism. This philosophy, it often focuses the idea that individuals are free and responsible for creating their own meaning in life. The poem, you see, portrays a search for meaning in a world marked by suffering and confusion. In the poem Enterprise, we see that the pilgrims embark on a journey seemingly in search for a higher purpose or meaning, but then as they face challenges and make choices, the poem subtly questions if they are truly finding or creating that meaning, or just reacting to events in the world that doesn't even provide easy answers. The poem ultimately asks deep existential questions about our place in the world. Now, absurdism. This idea suggests that humans naturally look for meaning in life, but the universe itself is fundamentally meaningless and indifferent. This clash, our desire for meaning versus the universe's silence, creates what's called the absurd. In the poem, with all their effort, the journey feels pointless. This reflects Camus' idea that life can seem inherently meaningless, yet we keep searching for meaning anyway. The false hope of the leader smelling the sea and their arrival at a place they hardly know why they were there. The sentence perfectly captures this absurd struggle. They do put an immense effort, but the outcome ultimately feels very hollow without any reason, isn't it? Now we look at nihilism. Nihilism is the belief that has no inherent meaning, value or purpose. It suggests that all traditional values and beliefs are baseless. That line in the poem, "Our deeds were neither great nor rare," is a powerful example of this. Despite their difficult pilgrimage, the journey ends without glory or special significance. It's a nod to the emptiness of grand pursuits. Even though they achieved what they started, they were not peaceful, suggesting that all their efforts amounted to a very little, leaving them a sense of nothingness, a feeling of emptiness. Ultimately, the poem here beautifully reflects the fragility of the purpose. How easily our goals can crumble, right? And that inner conflict between what we expect life to be and what actually unfolds. Now let's look at the poetic devices that the author uses in this poem. Now start with metaphor. Remember what a metaphor is? It's when something is directly compared to something else without using like or as. So what's the biggest metaphor here? Well, the entire journey the pilgrims take isn't just a physical trip. It's a powerful comparison, a metaphor for life itself, with all its hopes, struggles and discoveries. Symbolism. It's when Ezekiel uses objects or ideas to represent something else deeper. For example, what might the harsh desert or the deceptive mirage symbolize in the poem? They represent the internal struggles and illusions that the pilgrims face. And even the friend who leaves, can that be a symbolism? That's not just a person who leaves the group, but a symbol of lost unity or perhaps the group's idealism fading away. Now let's move on to the next one, irony. Do you actually know what irony this poem uses? The poem uses a strong sense of irony, especially towards the end. It is that after going through such a long and difficult journey, the pilgrims arrive at the destination but have no real understanding of why they were even there. Their great enterprise lead to an empty feeling. Now let's move on to the themes to reflect upon, the big takeaways from enterprise. What major themes should we reflect? The first one is the search for meaning. What is one of the first things this poem makes us think about? It's man's search for meaning. The whole journey in the poem really mirrors our own human desires to find purpose in life. The next one is disillusionment. And what happens to that hope along the way the journey? We see a lot of disillusionment. What starts with such great hope and excitement often ends in confusion and loss of direction, just like in our life. Third one, the human condition. The poem also tells us a lot about the human condition. It shows us how ambition, pride, ego and tough time really changes us and test who we are as people. And about the spiritual insight, there is also a deep message on the spiritual insight. What is the big lesson about grace? It's true that grace isn't found far away on some grand quest, but often right within us, at home, in our everyday lives. We all should keep this in mind. Then comes the failure of idealism. The poem teaches us about the failure of idealism. What does that mean? It means just moving forward or trying hard doesn't always guarantee real progress. Sometimes our big ideals do not work out as planned. Let us now look at fragmentation. What causes this? The poem shows us very clearly that unity, whether in a group or within ourselves, often breaks down when individual ego gets in its way. We all should try very hard to burn this ego out. Now, coming to the conclusion, we all saw that the pilgrims who started their journey in a very positive note end up reaching the destination, but in what state of mind? They were not as happy they started. They were all broken because of the ego that came in their way. So we all should strive hard not to bring in ego in any relationships or our life itself. Hope you all enjoyed this poem, and always keep thinking and go deeper. Thank you.